Hello, and welcome to
Papi Approved Movies.
My name is Papi.
And I'm Natalie.
In our podcast, we will review and critique my favorite PG-13 movies.
Movies that I wasn't allowed to watch until I turned 13.
Every week, Natalie and I will watch a new PG-13 movie.
And I'll see if Papi's movies live up to the hype.
Which, of course, they will.
Today we're going to be watching Forrest Gump.
Before we begin, there will be spoilers. If you haven't seen the movie and don't want it to be spoiled,
press pause and come back when you're finished. Now, Papi, tell me the deets on this movie.
Okay. Forrest Gump came out in 1994 with a runtime of 2 hours and 22 minutes. It was written by Eric Roth, based on the book by Winston Groom. It was directed by Robert Zemeckis. The main stars are Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, and Gary Sinise. This movie has had a big impact in popular culture. Whether it's all the quotes, the Gary Sinise Foundation, which has raised over $280 million to help our servicemen and women, Bubba Gump Shrimp Restaurants, or being immortalized with a Weird Al song. Forrest Gump is now part of the American culture, like the historical event and recounts. So what do you think, Nat?
Well, I thought it was a really pretty movie, but it was also very sad.
Yeah, I think it was very sad myself. I think all of us were having emotional moments during this movie. What do you think?
Yeah, but it was still a really pretty movie, I think.
Yeah. So, what did you rate it?
Drum roll, please. I give it a 5 stars.
Yay, 5 stars, finally. Well, we've had 2 5 stars now.
This is our second 5 star.
This is our second 5 star. Mean Girls was the first one, which I don't know if it deserved a 5-star rating, but I guess you did. And Forrest Gump, which is one of the best movies of all time. Actually won the Oscar for the best movie that year.
Really?
Yeah, and Tom Hanks, the actor who did Forrest Gump, he won an Oscar for his portrayal of Forrest Gump. So
nice.
Pretty good movie. All right.
Don't go anywhere. Papi Approved Movies will be back after this quick message. Hello, everyone. We would like to thank you for tuning into our podcast each week.
Nat and I really enjoy creating a podcast together, and we're so happy to share it with you.
Papi Approved Movies is separated by seasons, and this is the last episode of Season 1.
But don't worry, we'll be back on January 6th with a brand new season.
Thanks again for all of your support. We hope you have a happy Christmas and a Merry, Merry New Year.
See you next year.
Bye.
Please place seat backs and tray tables in their full upright position. Papi Approved Movies is back.
Why don't we get into the recap?
We start with a feather floating through the air, landing on Forrest Gump.
The dramatic build for this feather is so funny because if I was walking down the street, I would have just slapped it.
Oh, you would have just push it off like a bubble that flies in the air?
Yeah.
Actually,
just tried to catch it one-handed, ah, ha, ha.
The path that it takes in the movie, we just see it floating around, but it actually goes to different places in that town, kind of signifying part of the journey. So if you ever read up on that, it's kind of cool. Anyway, so Forrest Gump's sitting on a bench, it lands on him, and then a lady sits next to him, and he offers her a chocolate from his box of chocolates, and he begins to tell his life story. The story begins with little Forrest getting braces for his legs because he has a crooked back. His mama chides anyone who looks at him differently. She tells him, don't let anyone tell you that you are different. They own a bed and breakfast and meet all kinds of people.
I think it's really pretty how he says, the mom says that if God created us all the same, then he would have created us all with leg braces.
Yeah, that's
I think that was cute.
Yeah, I like that too. At the bed and breakfast, they met all kinds of people. What was the first person he met? It doesn't say who he is, but we do know. He teaches them how to dance. Who was it?
Elvis Presley.
Yeah, Elvis Presley. It's funny because he's teaching them how to do his dance moves with his bracelet. And then Elvis supposedly learned all his dance moves from Forrest Gump. So it's kind of funny. And Elvis was known for the time for his dance moves, so much so that there were people censoring him because his dance moves were so sexy. At the time, they didn't even want to film him from the waist down because it was too sexy. And that was all Forrest Gump who taught him how to do that. Next, Mama and Forrest meet the principal to go over Forrest's IQ score. They are below normal, which means he will go to a special school. Mama will not allow it and goes to extreme measures to make sure he stays where he is. Inappropriate scene. I think you saw that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah, it's sad in kind of many ways, right? Obviously, the principal taking advantage of Mama, but then also just
him not being allowed to go in. Especially when such a small difference between like the average, right? It was like only 1% of IQ that
I
he
think
didn't
he
make
had
it
to
by.
be 80 and he was 75. I think if I remember the exact
Was it
right.
75?
Yeah, I think it was like close. So, I mean, he wasn't right there, but
Yeah.
on the first day of school, Forrest gets on a school bus and no one wants to sit with him until he meets a girl named Jenny. They sit together and become best friends. When a group of bullies chases him down, Jenny tells him to run away. He runs so fast that he breaks his braces and gets away. We find out later Jenny is being abused by her alcoholic father.
It's so crazy because these children are like throwing rocks. Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It hit him in the head. They're actually he was bleeding, right? We saw
Yeah.
that where the kids are throwing rocks at him.
Like, do they have no conscience?
No, and they're just picking on him because he's different, right?
Yeah, but like there's a difference between picking on someone and like physically hurting them.
I know. And then we see those bullies later, actually, and they're trying to kill him, right?
Yeah.
So, time goes by and Forrest and Jenny are still friends in high school. Sadly, the same bullies attack Forrest. They're chasing him with their car, trying to run him over, so these guys are pretty bad.
Yeah.
This time, as he runs away, the high school football coach sees him and recruits him to play. He's amazing at football and even goes on to play college football, where he becomes an All-American and meets President Kennedy. Forrest eventually graduates from the University of Alabama and is recruited to the Army. On the bus, he sits next to Bubba after no one wants to sit with him. Same scene as earlier, right?
Yeah. It's kind of sad, though.
Yeah, like no one changes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when you're... It's sad to think that little kids that don't really know much are behaving the same way as grown adults. Like,
Yeah.
they don't change at all.
No, they're the same person. Anyways, he sits next to Bubba. Eventually, Forrest and Bubba become best good friends. Bubba knows everything there is to know about a shrimp. They both agree that they would buy a shrimp boat and go start a shrimping business together after they get out of the Army.
I love how in all the scenes that they're together, he's just talking about shrimp.
Yeah, the whole time. And then eventually he stops, right? He's like, that's about all. There are no other ways to make shrimp, right?
Yeah.
Forrest excels in the Army. Before he's deployed, he sees Jenny in a show. She's been expelled from college and is now singing naked in a club. Forrest tries to defend her, but she doesn't want his help, and she leaves him on the side of the road.
Does the whole Playboy Mansion stuff still exist?
I think
Really?
so. Yeah.
Ew.
It was a huge place. A lot of people would go there, celebrities. I think Playboy magazine still exists. Maybe they don't have nudity anymore. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
But talk about things that you would think that are still not being made today, but they are still, I think. Actually, I don't know.
If so, thank God.
Yeah. Forrest and Bubba get deployed to Vietnam, and they meet Lieutenant Dan, their platoon leader. Forrest is patrolling with his unit when they eventually are ambushed. Forrest runs away, but he goes back into the war zone to get Bubba. He saves many soldiers, including Lieutenant Dan. Sadly, it's too late to save Bubba, who dies in his arms.
Lieutenant Dan's whole thing is that all his family, like, died in battle, right? They were just, like, all awful, and they couldn't, like, survive. They all just died.
Right, so I guess there was a member of his family that died in every American war.
Yeah.
So I think he thinks that it's his turn to be the one who dies.
Yeah.
Forrest is now in the infirmary because he was shot in the buttocks. That's what he says. Next to him is Lieutenant Dan, who has lost both his legs. Lieutenant Dan is furious with Forrest because he feels he was cheated of his destiny, which was to die in Vietnam.
Yeah, but, like, the whole thing about destiny is that it just happens. So if he was saved, then that wasn't his destiny.
Yeah, but I think that's what he thought his destiny was. And he just didn't understand what his destiny could be if it wasn't that.
Yeah, that's true.
In the infirmary, Forrest is introduced to ping pong, and he's a prodigy. He's unstoppable.
It's because he always just gets told, like, the basic rules, and he's like, okay, I'm going to follow it. Like, I'm not going to try anything fancy, and it just works for him. Like how in football, he just keep run, and then he keeps running. In baseball, it's just don't take your eye off the ball and just hit it. And he does exactly that.
Yeah, he never takes his eye off his ball. I was off the ball. I was reading something about during any of the ping pong scenes, he never closes his eyes once. He doesn't even blink. He has his eyes open the whole time.
That must be so hard. They must take so many takes. They'll be like, oh my gosh, it's going so... Oh man, I blinked, guys. We got to start over.
They probably like cut it all up. But yeah, and then every picture that he takes, his eyes are closed. For his bravery, Forrest is given the Congressional Medal of Honor by President Johnson. At a Vietnam War protest, he runs into Jenny. They have a great walk, and the next morning, she leaves him again. This time, he gives her his Medal of Honor. I don't know why she took it. I don't know. That's one thing I never understood. Why would she take his Medal of Honor? She's protesting the war. He got the Medal of Honor for bravery in the war.
Yeah.
But she took it. And she kept it, which we'll find out later that she had it the whole time.
But it still doesn't make sense, especially since she was just gonna leave and, like, she was always on the move. It's like, why would she take it? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it wasn't even to spare his feelings, which she doesn't do at all any other time throughout the movie. So, yeah, I don't know. He serves out the rest of his tour playing ping pong for the army, even playing in China. He even meets President Nixon. Later, Forrest goes to New York to be on the Dick Cavett show and talk about China. It influences one of the most popular songs of all time. Which song was it?
Imagine, I think.
Yeah, Imagine by John Lennon. So John Lennon was with him on the show, and then he starts saying things which between the three of them they were kind of thinking like the lyrics of the song Imagine.
Yeah.
So
it was very funny.
So he's behind one of the most famous songs of all time and one of the most famous dancers of all time. So this is Forrest Gump. He did everything.
Did John Lennon actually like act in the movie?
No, so like all those, it's all like special effects. Like all those presidents, those were real presidents, but they didn't actually have like them in the movie. They just kind of like superimposed him onto someone else's body or someone else's shape,
Yeah, I figured that much. But like for this whole John Lennon scene, it's like they're creating the words of the song right there. And I doubt that in real time, without him being there, that he would have created the song while talking to someone on TV.
No, I think if you see his mouth, I think it doesn't match. I think it's dubbed in the words, like someone using his voice. Yeah. It's all like visual effects. Yeah. Forrest Gump wasn't real, and he wasn't in any of these things, so. After the show, Lieutenant Dan, in a wheelchair, meets Forrest, and they hang out together in New York City. Forrest tells him about his plans to buy a shrimp boat to keep his promise to Bubba. Lieutenant laughs and says he will be his first mate if he becomes a captain, just like joking around. He's like, I'll be your first mate.
He said, if you get to be a shrimp captain, then I'm going to walk on the moon or something like that.
Oh, he said something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is funny, it's later on, he has another astronaut joke about his legs. Anyway, we'll get to it later. Lieutenant Dan is depressed and drinking. They meet some girls on New Year's Eve, and when Forrest rejects one of their advances, she calls him stupid and Lieutenant Dan kicks him out. He falls and they laugh at him.
That's so messed up. You should never make fun of someone that's disabled like that.
Yeah, I thought they were laughing at him because he fell and he was like kind of awkward because he can't have his chair. But they were just rude.
Yeah, it was like they're so insecure that when this guy like turned them down, they're like, oh no, like now I'm like insecure. I have to do something now. I have to be mean. I have to like live up to something. So
yeah, like if you don't want to kiss me, that means you're stupid kind of thing, right? Yeah. Yeah, anyways. Forrest said she tasted like cigarettes. That's why he didn't want to kiss her. So. After Forrest is discharged, he uses a ping pong endorsement to start Bubblegum Shrimp. He buys a boat and names it Jenny. Shrimping goes awfully. A few days later, Lieutenant Dan joins him, and it doesn't go any better.
It's funny because, like, he's like, I'll be your first mate, right? But he's basically the captain, like, Lieutenant Dan is the
That's true, because during the storm later, he tells him where to go, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And my question is, why did he name the boat Jenny and not Bubba?
Yeah, Bubba would have been good. Well, they said you should name the boat, and then he thought of the most beautiful name he ever thought of, and then that was Jenny, right? He loved Jenny.
Or maybe, because, like, most boats are female names, right? So maybe that's why.
Could be. But I don't know if he knew that, necessarily,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I think it would have been... Well, at least he got the restaurant, though.
Yeah, we'll get there. Forrest joins the church choir and asks God to help, and the help does come.
I think it's so funny, because it's like... Lieutenant Dan is just sitting in the back drinking alcohol, like
at church.
Of the church.
Yeah, and Forrest is trying to sing and dance, and you can tell he doesn't really have very good rhythm, and he's trying to keep up. But he's there, right? And they accepted him at the church. So
he should have pulled out his Elvis moves.
Maybe not in church. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not there. I don't know. Hurricane Carmen comes in and destroys the entire shrimping industry. Forrest and Lieutenant Dan are caught out to sea, and Lieutenant Dan yells and screams, asking the storm to hit them harder. They survive.
Sir, do not test God.
Yeah, don't. Now he was screaming out for God, right? He's like, is this all you got? Like he's yelling at him. They survive, and Jenny is the only shrimping boat left. After that, shrimping comes easy. Bubblegum Shrimp skyrockets into riches.
Although, that makes you wonder about how much Bubba really knew about shrimping, because it took a hurricane to get them to be able to get shrimp.
Well, he wasn't around. So if Bubba was... that's a great question. If Bubba hadn't died, would they have been successful with Bubba? Because, Forrest didn't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
But Bubba did. He knew everything about shrimping, right?
Yeah.
He just never had the money to buy a boat. So I wonder if they would have been, I mean, maybe they wouldn't have been billionaires like they were, but I think maybe Bubba would have made them more successful. Lieutenant Dan eventually finds peace with his life. Sadly, Forrest's mama dies from cancer, and he leaves the business to Lieutenant Dan. He gives Bubba's family half of the money, keeping the promise he made to Bubba. Forrest then becomes a lawnmower, but is lonely and misses his mother and Jenny. That's my favorite part because Bubba was his best friend, and he gave him all the money, even though he didn't help out anything, right?
Yeah, it's true.
I love that.
Well, he did help out. He started the whole motion, you know?
He gave him the idea. It's true. Forrest wouldn't have, he would have just stayed home with his mom.
He planted Inception.
He Inception. Yeah. He did Inception on Forrest to become a shrimping business. And his mom became a millionaire, and then people were cooking her shrimp, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Jenny comes home, and Forrest is the happiest he has ever been. He takes care of her and asks her to marry him. She says no. And that night they are intimate. Inappropriate.
I don't know why, she said no then.
Yeah, she said no, and then, but more inappropriate than that, the next day she leaves him, and she doesn't even tell him.
Exactly, so rude.
And at that point, you have proof that she actually kept the Medal of Honor because she returned it to him that day.
Yeah.
Oh, that was like a slap in the face. Poor Forrest.
I know. I don't get what this mixed symbols are, because she obviously loves him and cares for him, but not really. What are you doing, ma'am?
Just her as a character in general. We can go over it for hours.
Yeah, but Jenny's character is also to show all the hardships she went through. So maybe she was so traumatized by everyone that and didn't have enough trust to actually be with him fully.
She trusted other people. She just never trusted Forrest. I don't know.
Yeah, but whenever she did trust people, after a while, she ended up getting hurt by them.
Yeah, but she ended up with people all throughout.
That's true.
You know, if she knew that Forrest was never going to break her heart. I mean, I'm pretty sure. I think she thought that he was too good for her. You know what I'm saying? She was broken, and then he didn't deserve that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I think she thought, but I don't know, to be honest. Forrest is sad and then eventually goes on a run that lasts over 3 years. He garners a cult following and eventually gets tired and goes home.
I can barely do the mile. What is this?
Yeah, he was running ocean to ocean, right?
Yeah.
Going through all of America. It's funny. You know, that's a whole scene in the movie that it's funny. It comes out of nowhere. And so,
yeah, it's kind of random.
Yeah, it's I don't know, 20 minutes in the movie. And then, it was only I was going to recap it for one sentence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He ran and then he went home. After the run, Forrest gets a letter from Jenny asking him to come visit her. That is why he's on the bus stop bench in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny because, has he been waiting there for, 2 hours? Because, that's how long the movie is for him to recap his life. So has he been sitting at that bus stop for 2 hours and how many seconds? And her house is just, so close?
Yeah, well, he didn't know. He was supposed to take the bus stop, and it was someone who told him to, that she's a lot closer. You don't need to do the bus. You could just walk it.
How many buses has he missed?
Well, at least, oh yeah, that's a good point. How many buses of his came? Because there was a lot of people who were there.
Yeah.
They were waiting for other bus lines, right?
Yeah.
And some people came, some people left, and, at the end he was with someone, but I don't know if the lady was taking his bus or not. But maybe you're right. Maybe he was talking the whole time and he didn't even pay attention to the bus line.
Yeah.
Forrest goes to Jenny's house and meets her son, Forrest, which happens to be his son. His only question to her is if he is smart or like him. She tells him that he is smart. Jenny tells him that she is sick and then asks to marry him.
It took so long for you to want to marry him. You had to wait until you were sick and suffering to marry him. Where the point where he can never truly appreciate you and help you and care for you,
That's a good point. Now she's ready for the trust. But I think it's the opposite way. I talked to Sophia about it too. She used him the whole time, and then now that she's gonna die,
she just used him again to take care of her child and to take care of her.
To take care of her, and then before she dies, and then takes care of her son, which happens to be his son too.
Yeah.
So. Well, that's a good question. If she never got sick, would she have ever called him? I don't know. What do you think?
Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. She didn't need him. She was fine, right? She was, I think she was a waitress?
No, she was daycare lady.
Or she was a daycare lady?
Yeah, I think so.
And then she seemed okay. She had a little apartment.
Her child was, what was it? Smartest in the class.
Smartest in the class. Everything
Watching
was going
Bert
well.
and Ernie.
Watching some Sesame Street, yeah. So I wonder if she would have ever let him know that he had a son if she hadn't gotten sick. They go back to his family home and they get married. Lieutenant Dan comes to the wedding with prosthetic legs and a fiancée. The same materials that the astronauts use, right? That's what he said.
For rocket ships.
Second astronaut. And then later on, those two actors, Tom Hanks and Gary Sinise, are in Apollo 13 together, a movie about astronauts.
Whoa!
Yeah, that's funny. And I do wonder, actually, I don't know if Apollo 13 was before Forrest Gump or not. Yeah, I don't know if it was on
That's
purpose.
such a coincidence. Wow.
Jenny eventually dies. In the final scene, we see the two Forrests waiting for the bus to go to school. Then little Forrest gets on the bus, and the feather floats away. The end. Oh, I do love this movie. I'm happy that you liked it too. I know we were all like, oh, emotional and crying about it, but I think it was
so sad.
It was so sad. And I know Sophia hated Jenny more than I think anybody. Jenny was the worst to her because, you know, she was pretty bad. So, all right. Could this movie still be made today?
Overall, yes. Again, about Jenny, there was like a lot of stuff that people did to her, like how her father beat her and how she was doing like a lot of drugs and stuff. But I think that would still be in there today because it's supposed to signify, like, it's supposed to truly show how tough her life was. And that, like, having a hard life and a terrible life, it's not differed by the year you're born in or whatever. That happens to a bunch of people. But I would say that there were, like, some random things that probably wouldn't be in there, not, like, including Jenny. Except for the fact that Jenny worked at the whole Playboy Mansion stuff.
Did she work at the Playboy Mansion?
Yeah, because the reason he found her was because the guy was reading Playboy magazine and she was in there. And he was like, oh, that's Jenny.
Okay, so the Playboy Mansion is like a place where a lot of people go to party?
Yeah.
They didn't show that in the movie, but she ended up in Playboy magazine.
Yeah.
And that's why she got kicked out of college, because she had her school jersey on or a school sweater on.
Yeah.
And the school didn't allow it. So that's why she got kicked out. Yeah.
And that there was just like a bunch of men like laughing at her and like.
Oh, when she was on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just like a club for naughty things.
Yeah, that whole thing was like not very. That's just, it's kind of sad that like the only way she could achieve her dream was to do it through something like that. Yeah,
unfortunately. And people were taking advantage of her for sure.
And then over the span of the movie, they did say the N-word a few times.
Oh, did they? Okay.
Yeah, which is not very good.
There was some racism there. Actually, his name, remember, I think he's named after.
That's another thing. It's they use the whole situation from the Ku Klux Klan as a joke in the movie.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
Whereas, it's not necessarily like a joking thing, you know?
No, sure. Yeah, no, I get that. That's kind of inappropriate. You're right.
Yeah. There was also, I don't know if I should mention this because people still use the Confederates flag today.
Well, go ahead. Say what you feel.
Yeah, also in the scene where they were getting bullied by those older kids, like the second time he was getting bullied. Unfortunately.
Oh, when they were in the car?
Yeah, the front of their license plate had a Confederates flag.
Okay. Yeah, no.
It kind of shows what kind of people they are.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they're from the South, and that was a big thing that people had the Confederate flag back then and probably still now.
Yeah. He lived in Alabama? Yeah, that was where it was. Yeah. So, that's kind of
Greenbow,
sad.
Alabama. Which is not a real city, but Alabama's a real state. Yeah.
And the movie did kind of try to make a point out of it, showing that, because, like, they zoomed into it, like, as the scene started ending, like, that scene, they zoomed into it to show the Confederates flag, to kind of show what kind of people they are.
Okay, that makes sense. Anything else with that?
No.
Okay. Does it pass the Bechdel test?
No.
It does not pass the Bechdel test. Oh, no. All right, so let's real quick go over the Bechdel test and then talk about how it does not pass it, according to Natalie. The Bechdel test is a test that we use to check representation of females in movies. 3 quick criteria. Number 1, are there more than 2 named women in the movie?
Yeah, there's multiple people. There's Jenny, there's Mrs. Gump, Louise, Mrs. Gump's, like, what was it made?
Yeah,
But
like helper.
She was also just like living there. Right?
I think she was like, she worked, because it was a bed and breakfast, so like she...
Oh, she was like a worker there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Lenore and Carla, which were the ladies that were being mean to two of them. Lieutenant Dan.
It's funny you remember their names. Okay.
Yeah. The way that they're named characters and some of like Jenny's friends aren't is kind of funny because they were in like 2 minutes of the whole show.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's it.
There's one more. I don't remember her name. Lieutenant Dan's fiance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Step number 2. Do any of the female characters talk to each other?
I think so. I know definitely Lenore and Carla talk to each other because they were always together. And Mrs. Gump and Louise talk to each other a bunch.
Okay. And Jenny and Mama never talked, huh?
No.
I don't think they ever in a scene together, actually.
No.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
It is strange.
Because you would think that if your child's best friend is like always with them together, that you would have met them in the show.
Yeah, like they showed up or, they come for something or another. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Lastly, do the females or do the women in the movies talk to each other about anything other than a man?
No.
Yeah, I think you're right. Other than the 2 women that they meet at New Year's Eve, they kind of talk to each other, but they're not really, they kind of...
But like there's always other people there. It's never just like the 2 of them.
No, I don't think that's the criteria. The criteria is that they talk to each other.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Because when they were talking to each other, they were talking about how one's dumb and one's,
yeah,
handicapped person. They were just laughing at them. They weren't necessarily... So they were talking about a man, right?
Yeah.
Although, and then the one time that I remember that Mama and Louise talked, they were talking about how Forrest was coming home.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if there any other time. You're right. I think it doesn't pass the Bechdel test.
It doesn't, sadly.
No. Most movies you're like, oh, do we have a villain? I would say the only villain in the movie is Jenny. She's the main character's love interest.
Yeah.
And to me, she's the villain in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
kind of strange.
Yeah, it is kind of
strange. That works out.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So now that we look back on it, I don't know if Jenny was a good character for Forrest. I think we all agree that Jenny wasn't necessarily a good character for Forrest. So.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right. Anything else?
Yeah, actually, in English class, we watched a little part of the movie of Forrest Gump to do like a rating on it.
Okay.
And so I took some of my rating and I'm going to read it now.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
It's about the whole how people are waiting on the bus stop with you.
Okay. Sounds good. Go for it.
So I put, life is like a bus stop. You will be waiting with some people for short times and others longer. Some people may leave early, some join halfway through, and others are waiting with you the whole time for the same bus. And eventually everyone must get on their bus. You might be sad to see them leave you, or you might even leave them without realizing. But no matter what, you just hope that the destination, whoever the bus might be for, is beautiful.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that with me. Was that this year or last year?
This year.
Okay. So shout out to your teacher for making you watch a little bit of Forrest Gump. Yeah, that was really pretty. I like that whole metaphor about the bus. And then you started it off with like, because the movie life is like a box of chocolate. That's a big saying.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about how it's the bus stop. And people coming on and off. I love it.
And how, like, people like Forrest Gump's mom was there all the time waiting with him. But even she gets on her bus when she passes away.
That's true.
And her bus's destination will be heaven.
Uh-huh. And then his final passenger on his bus is Little Forrest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with all of us. I think that was really pretty. And I'm happy you put it out there so you weren't afraid to share your writing. All right. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in to Papi Approved Movies.
If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast app.
We put out an episode every Friday. If you want to suggest a movie for us to watch and critique,
email us at papiapprovedmovies@gmail.com.
That's papiapprovedmovies@gmail.com. No spaces, no caps.
We'll try our best to get to your suggestion.
And remember, it has to be PG-13.
Next time, we're watching Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. So I hope you join us.
I'm Papi.
And I'm Natalie.
See you next time.